Hey guys, it's Rich with your Monday Spot in Pagan Perspective, and this week we're talking about the dark night of the soul. This week's question comes from our very own Brendan, who asks, I have a question for the channel that I am not sure if it has been asked or answered before. What has been the biggest challenge you have faced in your journey? Have you ever been through a dark night of the soul? What got you through it? First, I'm going to tell you one of my biggest hurdles in my life, and then I'm going to go into my whole definition of the dark night of the soul, because my definition might be a little bit different than other people's. So for one, my hardest journey, or hardest part of my journey, or one of them, has been whenever I had to do the eulogy for a friend of mine. She was 26 and I was 27. This is in 2014, so still a little fresh. But it was her grandmother relaying her dying wishes that I perform the funeral. And, well, you don't turn down a grieving grandmother. So I packed up everything, went down to Kansas, and did the funeral. And I held it pretty together for the viewing, and then the morning of the funeral came, and I completely broke down. In front of the immediate family, I let everything out. I mean, I wailed and everything. And I remember Grandma looking at me and she says, Rich, are you going to be able to do this at the actual funeral? I looked at her and I said, Grandma, if I don't get it out now, it'll come out during the funeral, and I owe it to her not to do that. And by golly, I was able to get through the funeral, and in private moments I continued to let it all out. And that was in March of 2014. And that journey continued until December 31st of 2014, whenever I don't promote the using of alcohol to solve your problems by any means. I just want to clarify that baseline. But I was determined that I was going to let 2014 go. I was going to make it a part of my history to change in the way that a 5-year changes you. And I was going to give it a good send-off. And besides her death, I had three actual family members and this close friend, and then even Robin Williams, which, if you guys were affected by Robin Williams' death as much as I was, I think a lot of people were, it was a tough year for me. So for about 9 months, all I did was be in that solace and that grieving process that entire time. And the grieving process isn't a time schedule. It's not something that anybody can put a timestamp on. There's no time limit to how quickly you have to grieve or how long it takes you to grieve. We all grieve in our own way, in our own time. So for me, it was 9 months. But on December 31st of 2014, right at midnight, I got down on my knees in the drunken stupor that I was, all by myself with my dog and cats, and I said, I'm done I am done grieving over the loss of 2014. 2014 is over, and I need to move on. And I did. And like I said, I am not saying that you need to get drunk to deal with your emotions. I'm not saying that at all, and please don't misunderstand that at all. And I do advocate getting a therapist if it is something that is needed, which I, looking back on it, should have. It is something that I should have been talking to somebody about. It's something that I should have been expressing to somebody else. It's something that I should have addressed in a more one-on-one manner with somebody, instead of trying to deal with it by myself, which is usually how I work. So looking back on it, that's something that I should have done. One of the things that got me through it, and I'm not saying alcohol got me through it, alcohol was, in this instance, a way of letting go of everything, to let down my inhibitions, to be that strong, stoic person that I tried to be, to really let down my guard and be my bare essence by myself in my own home, surrounded by the animals that love me. To say to my friend who was on the other side of the veil, to say to my family members that I'm cutting these ties, not to say that I don't want to have them as a part of my life anymore, not to say that they are not important to me, to say that I'm not holding on to that grief any longer. So for me, that was a modality that I used. And I'm not saying it was a good modality to use, but it was the one that I chose to use at the time. And even still, I have my friend come to me at times and pass on messages to me, one that recently came and that I shared on my personal channel. So I'm not going to get into it here, but having that constant connection with her is something that continually gets me through that grieving process that I'm still going through, little at a time. As much as I say I'm done, it's still a continuing process. So, yeah, that's probably, if not the toughest journey, one of the toughest journeys that I've come up against in my life. Now, my definition of a dark night of the soul, we use that term, and I think most often people think of it as this one night where you question everything and then the next day everything's perfect. And I don't think that at all. I think it's the misconception that it's only one night. And I did a little research on this. I think it was St. Paul of the Cross in the 18th century states that there were 45 years of his life that he would consider a dark night of the soul, where he questioned life after death and questioned his faith. Mother Teresa of Calcutta, now Saint Teresa, rightfully so, I do believe, in documents that were released in 2007, states that from 1948 until her death in 97 was most of the time a dark night of the soul, with brief releasing interludes. I can't help but look at the similarities that people who constantly strive in a spiritual manner, striving to understand deity or to get closer to deity in one way or another, no matter what their religion, their dogmas, doctrines, whatever you want to call it. I think most of us have multiple times of the dark night of the soul. I spoke about it in the 40-day empowerment journey that I have those quite often, the thoughts of doubt, the thoughts of, what if all that I believe is false? What if none of it is real? What if I'm a figment of somebody else's imagination? I mean, the what ifs go on and on forever, and then I have to stop myself and say, no. If I go down this rabbit hole, I will go too far. Let's hold to what I know, at least for now, until it changes again. It's not always easy to do, and I think the underlying thing that I want to hit home here is I think most of us who are on a spiritual journey of some sort have these quite often. And from the outside perspective, looking at the biblical realists, the ones that think if it's not in the Bible, it's not true, looking at them, you have to kind of admire it in a little bit of the way that they don't question anything. I think there's some peace to that, not having to question anything in your faith. But I think it also robs deity whenever you don't question anything. I think it robs deity of the realness that it is. I think not questioning God or questioning eternity with any philosophy, I think you're really robbing yourself of a truly deep and meaningful experience. So as much as I hate the dark nights of the soul, I kind of embrace them because it draws me closer to deity. So whenever it comes to the dark nights of the soul, how do we encounter it? How do we overcome it? I think it's that we, like I said in the video last month, was with challenges from deity. I think the same thing applies here with dark nights of the soul. I see them as challenges from deity. I see a lot of things as challenges from deity, if you haven't noticed. What is my takeaway from it? What am I learning from it? What can I leave behind from it? Ultimately asking, what is my takeaway? How will this change me? And often the answer comes whenever approaching deity with the questions of, have you sent this for a specific reason? Am I going through this for a purpose, for a reason, an underlying driving force of it? Is there something more to this? And if so, I'm a little lost, and can you spell it out? That usually is a little bit more cooperative for me whenever it comes to asking deity that question. What is my takeaway? Where are you leading me on this? And then, after I get past that situation, I wait for the next. I don't think they stop coming. I think they continuously come, especially for us spiritually minded people, which I think most of the people that watch the videos on the pagan perspective, I think most of us are on a spiritual journey of some sort, or at least interested in deepening our spiritual experience in one way or another. I think that any of us on the spiritual path will have these continuously and constantly asking deity, what's my takeaway? How am I supposed to change from this? Gets us through those times, and also can prepare us for what's to come next. Brennan, you didn't ask an easy question, and you really cut me deep. But I hope that I answered it in a fitting manner and fulfilled your requests. Until next time, may you have love, hugs, and ladybugs. Bye-bye.